negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
Hello, Marlins fans, and welcome to this edition of FOF Live, presented by Burger and Hicks. As always, you can check out Burger and Hicks on their Instagram, TikTok, and you can check them out on their website down below. As always, Marlins fans, here is the cast for today's live stream. Myself, Danny Rodriguez. We have Eli Sussman, Nate Karsmer, and joining us from FIU Athletics Broadcasting, Zach Letson. Zach, it's great to have you on. This should be a really great stream tonight.
Great to be here. Great to talk a little draft coming up. That's what we got. So.
Eli, before we start things off, I know you wanted to show off a little bit of an exclusive interview that we have with Marlins' newest draftee, recently signed as of a few hours ago. We'll go into more details on how much he signed with PJ Morlando.
No, well, first of all, it's only fair for anybody that missed our last stream. I guess first off, thank you for everybody who was on our last stream on Sunday.
Love us.
Reacting live to the PJ Morlando first round pick. As usual, was very well attended and a lot of strong emotions, considering that we were duped, we were misled, or not so much, but we were given an idea of what the Marlins might do with their first round pick, and that option wasn't available to them, so they pivoted to Morlando. So I think before going to now he's officially part of the Marlins organization, but just to refresh people about where we were, where our mindset was at the time of the pick, here's a quick rewind to Sunday
Look
night.
at your screens, anybody. Don't look. Look at me. Look at your computer screen. And with the 16th overall pick in the 2024 MLB draft, the Miami Marlins select PJ Morlando.
What?
Outfielder, high school.
Who?
PJ Morlando, who is the 43rd ranked prospect in MLB.
What are they doing?
We've come a long way in 5 days. Now PJ Morlando at Lone Depot Park today, and Isaac Azu, Kevin Burrell, they're on the scene. They'll join us for the press box report shortly. They spoke with PJ now that his signing is official. A quick interview with the Marlins first round draft pick. Here it is.
All right, we are here with Miami Marlins first round pick, PJ Morlando. PJ, just take us through that moment you got the call from the Marlins.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was such an emotional moment for us. I mean, what a cool spot to be in. You're coming back to Miami. For us, it's, our neck of the woods. So coming back to our home state, and representing Miami is going to be really, really cool.
Speaking with the players, speaking with Jazz, the manager, Skip Schumacher, just how has this been? Is it surreal or what?
Yeah, it's unreal. I mean, it's a dream come true. I mean, you get to pick all these guys' brains who've been here before and learn and take in as much information as you can as starting your professional career.
What are you most looking forward to learning in this organization now that you're going to start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're going to have me in the center field spot, so I'm going to take it as much as I can as being a center fielder, approaching the game a little bit differently and, trying to affect the art of hitting. There you go.
Last one from us. Which current major leaguer would you compare yourself the most to?
Yeah, for sure. I would like to say Bryce Harper. It's kind of a similar swing. He started off as a catcher, so did I. He started off as an outfielder, so did I. And he wound up playing first base while he was injured, and that's something that I kind of have as in my back pocket. So it's really, really cool to kind of compare yourself who's been in the major leagues and has made a name for himself.
Nate, you were one of probably on the extreme end of being caught off guard by the pick. So how has have you digested it now a few days later, now that it's official, what we've learned since then about PJ and everything else?
That was more so. I'm not going to completely backtrack, but I was more so expecting them to pick bench or a college bat. But looking back at it, we kind of should have expected something like that. I mean, in the recent trade rumors, we'd heard everyone say Marlins want guys, beyond 18, 19, 20 years old. So now, I mean, looking back at it, 2020 hindsight vision, it comes as no surprise. But I mean, the bat, like I said, at the moment, the bat has always been there. He's been one of the most polished bats in that 2024 prep class as long as he's been in high school, even before that. I do know that he does show up in the big stage. He won the high school All-American All-Star game last year. He won the MVP for that, and he won the home run derby against a bunch of good competition as well. We know that he did not do that well this high school season, but he did get intentionally walked. It's not the craziest level of baseball in South Carolina, so they probably want to get to his teammates that won't beat him like PJ could. I like to swing a lot. I don't think he's going to sit in center, to be brutally honest. I think he's going to be in a probably corner outfield spot moving forward. I like the Marlins trying to work him out in center. Why not? He's super young, so who knows? But I'm not too sure the speed or the defense, but the pure hit tool has always been there for him. So, and the fact that now they got him under slot, so they can take guys like Carter Johnson in the second round. Now I feel a lot better than I did at the time. That's for sure.
Yeah, and with PJ going under slot for what they were hoping, what the money was going to be, it gives them in term to have more money to sign other players, particularly maybe someone like Carter Johnson. Again, like guys like Aiden May, stuff like that, maybe be a little more expensive, a little more over slot. But Eli, with the Marlins going under slot and over $1 million under slot, just what does this mean for the rest of this draft class for the Marlins do have, and maybe what other players you think are going to get over slot?
Yeah, the big direct benefit of that was picking up Carter Johnson, who, well, you could argue Carter Johnson is the best prospect in this draft class. In fact, that's what we are arguing at Fish on First when we updated our top prospects list just yesterday, is we have Carter Johnson a few spots ahead of PJ. It's not a huge gap, but Johnson has a better chance at sticking up the middle position. As Nate alluded to, it's a real stretch that Orlando plays center field with Johnson. Maybe more hope that he actually sticks at shortstop, and the offensive upside is really exciting. So once we get that amount, we think that Johnson is going to get well more than that $1.6 million slot value. And all the way down, you see at the very bottom, this is myself reporting that Nate Payne is going to get much more than you usually expect from a guy in the 18th round, getting what is $85,000 over the soft cap that they use for those picks in day 3. So that comes out of your bonus pool as well. And I think overall, it gives them a chance to maybe sign all 21 guys that they picked. But the big question at this point is going to be, I think even casuals may have heard about this, selecting an Alaskan catcher, Cohen Nikolai, the 15th round. He's going to be the most dicey one at this point because Johnson's going to take up a lot of that money. We'll see exactly. I think there's a few other in the 5th round. They have Grant Shepherdson. He's going to go well over slot value as well. So I think the most likely outcome is they end up getting 20 out of 21, which is actually how the last couple draft classes played out before this regime change. Under DJ Svil, each of the last 2 years, they fell one short of picking up that last prep player in the later rounds. And honestly, that's not a big deal. And I think overall did a decent job, whether you want to say recovering from the Orlando pick or at least doing a lot of creative things, exciting things, frankly, the rest of the way down the board to make it look like a really solid draft class overall.
Yeah, and with these players and mentioning Cohen, he is committed to the University of Oregon, so that may be a very difficult task for the Marlins to try to get him out there. Again, maybe he does not want to go cross country. Oregon, closer to Hawaii, and doesn't want to go all the way from there to go down maybe Jupiter or whatnot. But we'll see his decision if the Marlins can't sign the catcher from Alaska. Zach, we haven't heard from you. Talk to us a little bit of what you've seen from the Marlins this draft, maybe players you've liked, you've heard of, and just your overall opinion on the Marlins.
Well, there's a lot to talk about with PJ, and I think the reaction to the pick on the stream was kind of fitting in terms of no one really saw that coming, and I think we all thought that it was going to be a college bat, but the Marlins didn't draft PJ Orlando for his defense or for what he can provide with his glove. They drafted him because he has some of the best raw power of any prep hitter really in this draft in terms of lefty, pull side. We talked about the home run derby, winning MVP. He's gotten the accomplishments at the highest levels in the high school games that he's played in South Carolina. And in his senior year, it's kind of hard to look at his stats. He was intentionally walked. Nate alluded to it. He was intentionally walked 18 straight times at one point. So that's why you look up and he's only got 2 bombs. It's not because he doesn't have the raw tools to do it. So I think that process has to play out a little bit before people can start ripping Peter Bendix to shreds about it. And then as it goes to Carter Johnson, I mean, I think Eli nailed it on the head, but in terms of where this guy's considered ranking-wise, what he did as a high school shortstop in Alabama, which no one's really done since Gunnar Henderson, and there's probably been more Gunnar Henderson's comparisons than I can count, so I'm going to stop. But so a guy that was ranked even higher than PJ Orlando. I think the Marlins got incredible value getting Johnson where they did in the second round.
Yeah, with those players, and maybe Carter Johnson, a lot of us have even talked, like Eli mentioned, someone that could potentially maybe be one of the top prospects for the Marlins, or at least the top hitting prospects in the years to come. Nate, I want to hear from you. I want to go deep dive into this draft class because it's very interesting how the Marlins drafted these players, especially in the later rounds. But as we dive deeper, maybe from going into the second days from that for the draft, second, third day, what did you see from the Marlins? What sneaky picks did you like, or maybe some unexpected, underrated players that they took?
Yeah, I believe Gage Miller, was that who they took from Alabama? Was that his name?
Yes,
yeah.
For Alabama.
Yeah, I love the pick. I thought he was going to get picked a lot earlier, honestly. Playing in the SEC, the toughest conference in all of baseball, and he showed out. I mean, they have even on his side of the infield, he played through it. They had a guy called Justin LeBron. He was I believe the SEC, one of the best freshmen in all the country, and Gage pretty much outperformed him. I mean, he had OPS over 1,100. I mean, he's been looking really good. He's probably going to end up settling at second, like we alluded to in the past, but I think he has the highest ceiling out of all those guys. Of course, Fenwick Tremble, grade A name. That's a name for the books, honestly. I don't know much about him. I know he struggled in Cape Cod last summer, but my favorite pick personally is Grant Shepardson. I believe yesterday, I think we found out that he's fastball, got up to 98, which is up 5 ticks from last fall. So you can see how projectable he is. Good off speed, played in kind of competitive area, but not really too much. But he has done really well in the travel scene as well. I don't know too much about the later round guys, but I'd say Shepardson is my favorite day 2 pick. Honestly, the upside's there. It's crazy.
Yeah, and for you, Eli, in terms of maybe some underrated players they took, and maybe even guys outside of these first 10 rounds, you could go from Cody Shear from UCLA. In high school, he was a guy maybe projected to go in the early rounds, and then really mightily struggled at UCLA and was, I believe, a top 150 prospect going into this draft, and the Marlins took him in the 13th round. Are there any guys like that you see from this draft class that really catch your eye?
A bunch of these guys on day 3 actually did. It started with Jake Flaherty. I keep thinking Jack Flaherty, but it's Jake Flaherty, no relation, except that he also throws gas. A guy that threw 15 innings in his whole college career. Most of that came last year. The previous 2 years he was hurt at Arkansas, but he had an incredible summer in Cape Cod, and I think that went a long way towards getting the Marlins interested. That's the one guy I asked, first of all, to Frankie Pilari about, is like, how do you make the decision to draft a guy that has a 15-inning college career? And, due to what they saw recently, they just were, in studying his stuff, they thought that his stuff was about as good as anybody else that they drafted in this entire class. So he's only going to be a reliever. He's only been a reliever recently, but he's pitching some high leverage spots and he's done well, and he has the makeup for that, they believe. So starting with that, I found that was just really interesting. I just couldn't think of many comparable cases of college players getting drafted with such minimal experience. And not just that, he can't throw strikes, or at least he hasn't been able to throw strikes until a little bit this past summer. But even in his previous summer ball and in his limited college career, this is a guy that was walking a batter an inning, if not even more than that. So a really bold pick, but if it's day 3, then it's, I guess, not a huge investment, a huge risk. We'll see how the negotiations go with Cohen Nikolai, but that one obviously catches your attention because coming from a place in Alaska that produces so few pro players, period. Then right after him, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but the guy from the first baseman from Niagara who transferred to Tennessee. Do you have this pronunciation?
I think it's Radizak.
Radizak. That seems likely. So he's technically like at Tennessee. Yeah. He was supposed to transfer to the reigning national champs for his last year eligibility, but he's like 23 years old. I think he's going to sign and go pro. And he just seems like he had an incredible offensive career, and especially this past season, where it's not sexy, but this organization can really use high floor bats, guys that are both disciplined and have power. He's a huge guy, so I think there's going to be a lot of power there, and that's someone where if you have a guy that can, even if he's just a first base DH, there's value to that. So I think that one was really interesting as well, and kind of awkward for him because he transferred to Tennessee and he was ready to play ball there. But I think the Marlins are going to give him enough to bring him pro, and he's obviously somebody that could move relatively fast, considering that he's already older than most of these other draftees.
Yeah, we have Alex Carver, and I want to hear his thoughts on the draft. Maybe another guy that potentially as an underrated. Look at someone like Micah McDowell, 23 years old from Oregon State. I talked to someone earlier today who covers the Beavers, and he mentioned Micah McDowell as someone who's just been a leader for that team, has over 550 at-bats at Oregon State, which at that time, it seems like a lot, has really proven there to go every day, just injuries. But listen to more on that in the next couple of days on Micah McDowell. But from that, Alex Carver, we're talking some late-round guys, some late-round steals potentially. Who do you like out of these names? Who really catches your eye before I want to get everyone's draft grade?
Well, it's a little higher than this, but I think the best pick that they made in this draft is Shepherdson. I think to get that guy in the 5th round was incredible. A guy that's already throwing 100 miles an hour with a 6 slider that he can throw to both sides of the plate. I think that's going to wind up being their best pick in this draft. I think that where they got him, I mean, obviously high school guy, so they're going to have to go pay him money to bring him here. But I think that with the money they saved on somebody like Morlando, that's where the money can go. So that's what you like about the Morlando signing more than anything, is it allowed them to go out in the later rounds and get a guy like that. So that guy's going to be, I think, the best pick in this draft. I think he's the furthest ahead high schooler that the Marlins have had in a bit, especially off the mound. I think that he is very good, and I don't think he's really getting the credit that he deserves. But from everything that I see and hear about him, they're going to like that guy. He's going to be pretty damn good. So that's the guy I really like. The Morlando thing, it's one tool that they're paying for, and they're hoping that it works out, but they think that it can. They told Isaac today 70 grade game power eventually, which I will have to see. The pick of Johnson is also decent. I think that guy has a more rounded hit tool than Morlando and is the better prospect right now, which is what it shows in our rankings that we agreed on the other day. Later round guys, I haven't really dug too deep into many of those later round guys. At that point, they're just spreading money around, I think, and trying to make the most of the pool that they had. So, I think they'll sign most of these guys. Probably won't sign the Alaskan guy. I think Eli just said that. But other than that, they should sign most of the rest of them. So signability, I don't think is really a huge problem for them in this draft. I think that they did well with signability outside of maybe 1 or 2 guys. So that's fine. And we could grade it here in a second, but I don't think the best Marlins draft by far. Is it better than a DJ Svalik draft? I think the jury is out on that, especially in terms of what they did early on. So, for them to come out and say that that Morlando is the best player available, they know that's not true. And it's no knock on Morlando. He seems like a nice kid, but they know that that's not true, that he was the best player there. They're now possibly hinting at other things, like Bench had an injury problem that they were worried about and stuff like that. Fine. That's respectable. But for them to come out that day and say that Morlando was the best player, I think that we all know that that's not really the case. Anyways, I think just okay. I think they did well with signability, and I really like that 5th round guy is kind of my main thoughts so far on what I've seen and heard.
Yeah. Before we bring in Kevin Carver really quick, what is your draft grade on this? Because you were the most critical of the Marlins draft coming out of it, and especially after that Morlando pick and as that day one progressed. So what's your overall grade before we get to Kevin?
I think the Shepherdson pick saves it a lot from being really bad. So I think the Johnson pick is also good for them to get him at that spot. I think it was good. I think they probably could have flipped Johnson in Orlando, but Okay, and probably saved more money off Orlando, which is what they wanted to do. But he's going to hold true to the fact that, hey, I still went in the first round and I want to go to college. So maybe you could have even saved more than 1.3 million, which is what the Marlins wanted to do. So anyways, I think it's just okay. I'll give it a very average grade. I'll give it the most average grade I can. I'll go C, straight C on this for the Marlins in this draft.
All right. I want to hear from Eli, Zach, and Nate, their draft grade. But before that, let's bring in from the ballpark, Mr. Kevin Balat, to talk about all the juicy details he heard and seeing Mr. Morlando.
Hey, Kevin.
Kevin,
What's up, guys?
big day, lots of news. Talk to us. How's Brian De La Cruz looking? No.
Great.
So talk to us about Orlando, him coming in there. His first thoughts. I can imagine it's always a whirlwind when you have the new draftee coming, seeing everything, and maybe some major leaguers that came up to him.
Yeah, I think almost everyone came up to him, honestly. He's a cool guy. We spoke to him a little bit. Yeah, well, there you go. I got that one-on-one with him. He's a great guy, very, very cool, very well-spoken. His dad was in the military for a couple of years. He was a Clearwater resident for a bit, and he was actually born here in Florida. So he said it was cool that he gets to come back home to Florida. You can see there he has that Marlins chain. He said he needed to impress Jazz a little bit. So with some bling out there, so he got it out there, and yeah, he's a really cool guy. We got to speak to him a little bit. We spoke to his agent. They're very, very excited about this opportunity, and they're really glad they got a deal done. At the end of the day, it was looking a little interesting at times, but they got the deal done for an underslot deal there.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on it being an underslot. We were just talking about it being underslot and using it to, guys potentially Shepherdson or maybe they tried to go after Cohen with that extra money. Just your thoughts on signing Orlando, not just overslot, but over $1 million overslot.
Yeah, it was expected. This is a guy who wasn't even supposed to go on this pick. Everyone knows that. The organization's very aware of that too. So just expect it, honestly. He was supposed to be a comp pick, and worst comes to worst, a second rounder. So they got themselves a good deal for a guy who could be really, really good if everything works out and the development team really gets it going with him. And we'll see with Cohen. That's definitely we'll see what happens with him. Shepherdson, I'm sure they'll get a deal done, but it may be a third straight year going 20 out of 21.
Did he take batting practice? I didn't see any footage of him doing.
Oh yeah. So from what we were told is that they're actually they're trying to go away from that. So no, Orlando did not take batting practice. The last draft pick to do that will have been Kemp Alderman. So and before that was Jacob Berry. So I think now we know why. But
Interesting.
Yeah. No, but he's excited. He said he's going to go to Jupiter. We aren't exactly sure the level yet. We were told rookie ball, but there's a chance that it could be low A. So we'll see. I mean, Carver kind of noted it. And we've noted it multiple times that FCL season is really about to end. It ends on the 25th, and then there's the playoffs. So maybe he'll get a game or two in there and then Jupiter, but we'll see when that happens. And I know there's a camp here at Lone Depot for some of the draftees. So there are other opportunities as well.
It's just really ironic because this guy, he's a batting practice darling. Like that's what he does. That's like his best activity. That's kind of what he's known for. And they don't even do it. Oh well. All right. Well, very disappointing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's get to the actual game. Sadly, yes. But the Marlins are coming back out of the All-Star break. Kevin, how did the guys look? Do they look rejuvenated? And maybe what did Skip say during his presser?
Yeah, Skip was very vocal today in his presser. One of the more vocal ones I've seen, obviously addressing the Jazz situation. He's not blind to this stuff. He knows what's going out there on social media. And he's claiming that this is not, an audition by no means. You kind of look at it. There's obviously a reason to say it's not. It gives opportunity for someone like Hazen Sanchez to get out there. Would have given Dane the opportunity to play center field. We'll see what happens there now, obviously, with the injuries. So, yeah, you could say it's blatant, but at the same time, I mean, there's reason to think it's not. And he was very strong about his opinion. He mentioned Jazz multiple times. He knows what's going to come in the next couple of weeks. He knows that this is a business at the end of the day, and trades are going to be done. So it's just right now about keeping the clubhouse together. He mentioned that nobody has requested a trade yet. So from what he's aware, but every move that is currently being made when it comes to lineup and fielding, I guess defensive positioning, that it's all skip, nothing's coming from the front office. So yeah, he was very vocal about it today. So coming right out of the gate, second half and trying to win games, that's still the goal of this team, and rightfully so. They're trying to clean up this record so they can look as nice as they can, at this point in the season.
Yeah, we're mentioning everything there in terms of maybe Jazz, the trade rumors there. We'll get to that maybe a little bit on the stream. But anything came out, any injuries, anything like that, anything else mentioning towards this day?
The Dane Myers injury will not be season ending, so he should be back towards the back half of the season, probably honestly in September if I had to guess, or very late August. But yeah, he is not being out. He's not going to be out. Again, none of the pitchers are throwing, which is crazy. So very unlikely that they're back, honestly. I would say some of them are probably done for the year, honestly. Just doesn't make much sense to even put them out there, maybe some AAA rehab games or something. But yeah, everyone's pretty far away. Simpson probably could be back soon. Maybe we'll get to see him towards the end of the season if he gets some action out there. But yeah, nothing crazy. Maybe Sixto is the closest of the starters to come back. But we'll see. We'll see if he's even back. So
yeah,
what happened with Avi Garcia there. So maybe it's the same situation. So yeah, just nothing real crazy. Otto Lopez is back. Skip did mention that we could see Otto Lopez in the outfield. So that's something that I guess kind of keep looking at, because obviously it paves way for someone like Vidal Brujan to play a little bit of the infield, and it gives, I guess, yeah. I mean, at this point, you're really just looking at who plays what position, who proves themselves the most. And now with Dane out, it opens a lot more opportunities for Brujan to play second. You can put Otto in the outfield. You can put Otto Lopez as well at shortstop. So we'll see how that all ends up. So yeah, I mean, they're trying to give guys opportunity to play and to show that they could be here in the long run, not just in the short term this year.
Yeah, I mean, just to address this comment quickly about Weathers, it was his finger on his throwing hands, and he just could not do anything resembling throwing until the finger healed. Even though the weird thing is just how long it took that finger to like fully heal. It took the finger over a month at this point. And but now he's yeah. So like as Kevin alluded to, if these guys aren't even throwing yet, it's a long process. It's 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks to start a throwing program from scratch and get fully stressed out as a starter again. So I think if I had to, I think there's a chance that all these guys get back before the end of the season, but it might be the very end. It might be like mid-September, and it's just shocking considering no surgeries involved. It's really frustrating for these guys for sure.
100%.
Yeah. Kevin, before we let you go, we have a couple minutes. Oh, go ahead, Carver. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention real quick because of Edwards starting today, and ask maybe Eli and Kevin you a question if you've heard today or have maybe not heard directly, but maybe seen signs pointing this way. Of course, as we know, on Sunday, Max Meyer will save a year of control and be with the Marlins until at least through 2029, and is an expected guy to join the Marlins sometime at the deadline. If he does, he pitches tonight, he would be in line to start Wednesday against the Orioles, which would be Cabrera's next start. So how do you guys anticipate, if Meyer did get called up again, which we don't know, I'm just speculating, if something like that were to happen and Meyer did get called up, how would they juggle something like that with Edwards' rest?
Well, I don't think Edward is, even though, as you noted, it's on Edward's start day. I think the short answer is they would push Edward back a day. They don't have a fifth starter right now. It's your beloved Brian Hoeing, but he's not even, he's not really being treated as a starter right now. It's going to be a bullpen day the day before. So I think this short-term thing, fingers crossed, if Max does come back to make his next start in the big leagues, that it would be on that day, they would send down whatever reliever is, most heavily used, or maybe somebody else. As people are probably aware, they can't send down Edward because he's out of options. And as poorly as he's pitched so far, I think the leash is going to be a little bit longer before they do anything drastic with him. So I think the short answer is that Cabrera gets pushed back a day to make room for Max as soon as Wednesday, if things go well tonight. And so he is pitching tonight in Jacksonville. 1 run allowed in his last 3 starts combined in Jacksonville. Hopefully this is just the final step to get him where he deserves to be in the big leagues.
Yeah. Before we let you go, Kevin, what is your draft grade overall for the Marlins on your last thing before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, definitely an interesting draft. It kind of touched a little bit of everything. Assuming they'll go 20 out of 21, I would have to agree with Carver. It'll be a C. I'll go C plus. I'll be a little bit more positive than Carver in this one, but they got some guys in the back end of the draft that could be pretty good. They were very high on the Arkansas pitcher. I'm not exactly sure on his name right now, but they're very high on him. Apparently, a lot of teams are in on him, so he's going to go over slot from what I'm told.
Oh, wow.
So that's an interesting name there. Cohen, we'll see what happens. Obviously, that may change the grade, but he's the number one player out of Alaska, out of all places. So interesting. We'll see what happens there. We'll probably have something out on that in the coming hours or even soon enough. So, but yeah, I'll go C plus. I think the Morlando and Carter Johnson one. I was talking to Frankie Pilleri. He's very high in both. He's very excited. He said that he believes he got 2 first rounders with the first 2 picks in the draft. So. Yeah, he's not totally wrong. I mean, but I think we all know who's actually on the board over these 2 guys originally. So you have to shift, and they shifted to a different strategy.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for Kevin. Go follow Kevin on Twitter. He'll have all the stuff going on for today's game against the Mets. Yes, there is a game going on. Yes, there is an actual professional baseball game happening. But Kevin, always a pleasure.
Alrighty, boys.
And I think this is perfect time to go into a break. Eli, do a little flip fish, and then we come back. We do a little more in the draft, some trade rumors, and then finally get to the Mets-Marlins series.
Yeah, so this might be new to Zach, but you guys are familiar with how this works, picking a player who, during his major league career, spent time with both the Marlins and their opposing team at some point. This is one of the more difficult ones that I've done so far recently. This one I'm giving an 8 out of 10 in difficulty. Ooh. They had a left-handed pitcher who had a fairly long big league career. Played in the big leagues from 2005 to 2019. He started 277 games, exactly as many wins as losses, 17 more. Yeah, so mainly a starter during his career with both the Marlins and the Mets. And I guess the hint is in the spirit of the draft. This guy was a very high draft pick of the Marlins way back when. So former, very early Marlins draft pick that pitched for both these teams. Didn't actually pitch very well for these teams, but made stops with them during his career. We'll go to our break, think it over. A whole lot to get to on the other side, so stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Any ideas? It's a hard one.
I'm pretty sure I got it.
Okay.
I think it's better known as a Royal, I'd say, but I believe it is Jason Vargas.
Oh,
well done.
That's right.
Vargas. Yeah, he was. Did he start an All-Star game for the Royals? He made an All-Star game. I feel like
I don't know if he started. Let me check that out.
That was like one of those all-time fluky first halves of a season. Yeah, in 2017. I remember that.
He started it? Wow.
He started the game down here?
No, that happened to be the Marlins. Well, I don't know if he started. Well, now let's just double check to be sure.
Let's see.
No, thank goodness he did not start.
Okay.
They just got edged out by Chris Sale.
Oh, yeah, the Scherzer Chris Sale one. Okay. Oh, all right. Let's go a little bit more into this draft. Finish it up. I want to hear more from Nate and Zach on this draft. Nate, we're doing some more draft grades now that we all have all 21 guys who could Marlins. We have multiple players already signed. What is your overall draft grade a week or so after the draft?
I'm still on the fence about the Orlando pick, but I do like how it allowed the Marlins to get Carter Johnson. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. I believe he has a very high ceiling. I'm not going to go Dunder Henderson, just yet, but I believe he's going to be a very good player for the Marlins. Also love the Shepherdson pick, as Carver alluded to. I think he's going to be a stud as well. I like Aiden May also on day one. I think he's going to be very good. A little bit of an older guy, but a good fastball slider combo. I like the later bats they got too. They got some proven guys. I mentioned Miller. I mentioned what's the guy? The guy from Eastern Carolina. I think that was a huge.
Cowart. He has 3 names.
Yes, exactly. Yep. The guy from Washington that Danny did the pod on today. I liked him a lot as well. So I think they got some very proven college bats. Might be on the older side, but I mean, those day 3 picks, you got to go with those guys. I believe they picked a good crop. So I'm a little more positive than both Carver and Kevin. So I'm going to go with the B-. I just honestly, just for the upside of Carter Johnson, I believe he's going to be very good. I think I said 3 times in the chat on the draft night that they really could have got Johnson at 16. I would have liked it better, honestly. So I'm going to go B- just for him and Shepherdson's upside alone.
That's what I was saying. You get Johnson first, and then Morlando, who probably still would have been there, at least in the comp round. He still would have been there.
I think fans are a lot more happy if you
could have saved even more money, right? Yeah.
So,
yeah, but maybe you think maybe Johnson would have taken the full slot if he would have gone at 16. You think that's someone that will be the full slot value compared to Morlando if he was?
No, but
I don't think it would have been
fascinating
full slot.
dynamic.
No, they weren't going to get
I think he would get more than Morlando, though.
Slightly more than Morlando, but I don't think he would have gotten the full 4 mil or 4.7, whatever it was.
Yeah. So, Zach, I want to hear your final draft grade, and then we'll go Eli, and then we'll get to a little bit of the trade rumors.
I'm with Nate. I think B- is the right grade. I'm a big believer in that Gage Miller pick, as Nate was talking about. 1 year in the SEC, and you're able to hit leadoff in that lineup, which was absolutely loaded for Alabama. That tells me a lot. So getting him where they did, I think says a lot. And the same with Johnson. Those are 2 picks that I think the Marlins did a really great job of value-wise with those. And Cam Clayton's actually a guy who I watched a couple of summers ago in the New England Collegiate Baseball League, and he's someone who's always had a tremendous glove and obviously Pac-12 Player of the Year, and so the Marlins able to scoop him up late. So I think overall they addressed a lot of needs, especially from a position player standpoint. Yes, the first-round pick caught everybody completely off guard, and that's why the grade isn't any higher than it is, but I'm going to go B+ also.
Like I don't want to like say that like he's at the park today. I don't want to make it seem like we're like hating on this guy as a player.
For sure.
In Orlando, we're not doing that. And if he can make the most of that raw power, then he could be good. But it's just there's a lot of questions.
It was just sure.
Yeah, to spend that on your first round pick, I thought they had to go more sure thing. Surprising.
Yeah, you mentioned on draft night too. You're banking a lot on one tool to hit because, like we said, his defense and his speed's not really there. So if the power's not there, he could be in trouble. But who knows? We just gotta. This is like I think I mentioned also on draft night. This is the first test of the new. Can they develop a hitter? They've tried it in the past couple of years, but they have now Morlando and Johnson, so it's all up to them at this point.
I guess I'll wind up somehow in a more positive place than anybody else with a B right here. Just to remind people that coming off the year that they had, the successful year that they were drafting 16, and they were actually like 19th in every round further down because of their reverse record last year. And the draft bonus pool was slightly below the major league average. Like they just weren't in a great position to clean up. And yet they did land like a handful of guys that we've touched on that we think have a chance to be really interesting. And, probably 1 or 2 in particular in Johnson and in Shepherdson that could be really exciting if everything clicks with them. So like given the limitations that they had bonus pool wise, like they did all right here. They're going to be in a much better position next year because the major league team is going to be so much worse. So next year they're going to have so many more resources to use and do creative things, and that'll be the bigger test. That's frankly the more consequential draft class because there's going to be so many different directions that they could go and use those resources for. That will really either move the needle or set them back. That's going to be the really big test of this new regime next year. I think in the meantime, it was solid with what they had, even if it's not franchise changing. They just weren't really in a position to do something sexy from top to finish. They had to make a really awkward choice at the top. And I think what they did the rest of the way after that there's a lot of logic to it, and also a lot of things to be really intrigued about.
Yeah. And if for those wondering, for next year, the Marlins are currently tied for the best odds for the first overall pick with the Rockies. So always keep in sure with that between those two teams. Don't have to worry about the White Sox or the A's because of their market size. But Eli, everyone, let's go ahead and talk about some trade rumors that have gone down throughout this All-Star break. Let's start off with Jazz Chisholm Jr., probably the name more aforementioned throughout this trade buzz for the Marlins. Someone that could potentially, we've heard the Royals, we've heard the Pirates. Could it be the Yankees? But it seems like maybe Jazz more than likely will be traded this off season. Eli, talk to us about Jazz getting traded, where he could go, what's the best fit, what can the Marlins potentially see as a return for the young center fielder?
Yeah, there really are a lot of options. The one that continues to make the most sense for both sides is the Seattle Mariners. That's been on our radar for a few weeks now. Bob Nightingale, so you take it with a grain of salt when it comes from Nightingale, but he's the one that singled out the Mariners as perhaps the front runners. And you can see why, just because their farm system is really deep on the kind of hitters that the Marlins could really use, guys whose not just their talent level is worthy of being a centerpiece in the Jazz trade, but also because timeline-wise, those are guys that are still a couple years away from sticking as big league regulars that I think align with what the Marlins are trying to do and what they've done with their other previous trades. The Giants, for the first time today, I saw Jim Bowden mention the Giants as a possibility, and I dug in deeper, and they really are getting awful second base production so far this year. They're dead last in the big leagues in stolen bases. The Jazz almost has as many steals by himself as the San Francisco Giants have as an entire team. So that fit-wise, I could see it, but they probably have to play a little bit better the next week and a half in order to actually be buyers, because right now they're a few games below 500. That makes you question whether they should actually make that kind of investment one way or the other. And the Pirates are a name that they've been out there for a while. They're in a similar position as the Giants, where this year it's a long shot that they make it into the postseason. They have more of a void in center field that Jazz played up until just a week ago, and he's playing there again tonight. So depending on how they feel about his center field defense, he could help. I did want to play this clip from our buddy Craig Mish. He hopped on Pittsburgh local radio today, and not a whole lot from that conversation, but I found this was kind of most interesting, really pouring water on the idea that the Marlins are going to get a haul in return for Jazz.
What do you think it's going to take to get Jazz Chisholm?
Not as much as people think, but a painful enough trade where you'd be losing some lower-level players from your farm system. That would be my estimation.
Ooh, so what would you define lower level as? That's an interesting
players 2-3 years away from the big leagues that are higher up in your prospect list. Major league players that are not ready, like Tamar Johnson, no, that would not be it. It would be players that are not ready to go next year, but maybe 2-3 years down the line.
Yeah, so Tamar Johnson, for anybody that's not familiar, he's a consensus top 100 prospect, not a surefire superstar. He's someone that even he has some questions about his overall game. And if even he is too rich to be a centerpiece in a Jazz deal, then I think that would catch some people by surprise that the Marlins might not be able to get him. But I think that kind of just reflects the year that Jazz is having, where he's still just not lighting it up. He's been an average-ish everyday player, maybe a little bit more than that if you account for the base running and if you like his defense. But even though it kind of felt like they might be selling high just because he's healthy, the overall production, if you just poke in and see what other fan bases are thinking, the ones that are in Jazz rumors, not a lot of them are super duper excited when you're just being honest and just looking at what the production has been. The hype and the name brand value of Jazz has exceeded the production every step of the way. And unfortunately, front offices can see through that.
Yeah. And, them mentioning getting lower level guys, I want to hear from Carver on this, on the potential of getting lower level guys for Jazz. What is your opinion on maybe that potentially being the haul for Jazz, maybe how those lower level guys could fit maybe with the Marlins philosophy?
Yeah. I definitely think it fits with the plan of making this a more of a long-term project than the short-term project. And I think that Craig has been pretty right about that so far with things that we have seen. I mean, they just went out and went high school heavy at the top end of the draft. That's going to fit in right in with that. This is a thing for the long term. They know that there's probably even a couple more tough years ahead, but what they're building at those lowest levels of the system, you like it. Look at what the FCL Marlins are doing this year, even though, yes, I know, Eli, they're more like an extension of the DSL. Yeah, I know all that, but still that team is ridiculous. They won their division. They stole 200 bases. They're hitting very well. There's multiple pieces down there that could be in Jupiter right now, but they're keeping them down because they want to go with long-term development and keep them around that same team for the whole year. So those 18, 19-year-old kids that are down there now, we ranked Valor as high as he is for a reason. There's other guys from that team that could be ranked. I mean, those are the guys, when you look at this Marlins minor league system right now, those guys are the guys to watch, not really the guys at AAA, not even the guys at AA. The guys at single A and rookie ball are the guys that they are really buying into. And I think that's what you'll see in the the trade deadline. You did see it in the draft. They're going to go with more guys like that. Those guys that are going to be ready probably by like 2027, 2028 is probably what you're looking at. So I think it fits.
Yeah. Zach, what is your opinion on the Marlins trading Jazz? Is this a guy you would like to keep around for the Marlins or for the long-term feature, someone that could be the face of the franchise, or are you more in tune that maybe Jazz's value is this as high as it's going to get for him, unfortunately, and now maybe the best time than ever?
Well, I think there was a point in time where we certainly all wanted that first example to be the case, what you said about having a guy that you can build around, but it being the middle of July, that ship has, I think, long sailed. And I think that it's only right to at least see what the market's like, feel it out. And as Carver said, a lot of those kinds of players that aren't 2 or 3 years away that you could potentially be getting in return is exactly the philosophy of what this is supposed to be for Peter Bendix, what he's tried to sell to Marlins fans. And so I think that it's inevitable, unfortunately. And as someone who's loved watching him play, but Eli said it, and I think it's correct that the season and a lot of aspects from him has been relatively average. And the best part is that he's been more healthy than in past years, because that certainly is not a guarantee, as we've learned.
Yeah. I know another player that could potentially be traded, or will most likely be traded, is Tanner Scott, who we did see in the All-Star game. Very quick performance by him, getting out on Anthony Santander and All-Star game MVP Jarren Duran. But I want to hear, we'll start with you, Eli, with Tanner Scott. This is probably someone, again, compared to Jazz, more than likely to be traded, maybe close to 99% will get traded by the deadline, and just had an amazing performance in this first half of this season, around $5 million his salary. Again, but with Tanner Scott, is this someone, if you just trade him by himself, will give you, again, lower level guys like Jazz, or maybe you package him and Jazz together and get maybe some better prospects, guys who could potentially help the franchise sooner rather than later?
Yeah, well, that's always the dream, and that's what fans love to do. They love to create massive packages of deals, and you just need the other team to be interested in acquiring the players and valuing both of those players really highly at the same time, which is just kind of rare, because even if a team loves Jazz in particular, it might be another team that is higher on Tanner Scott in a vacuum, and that's part of the complications here. It's hard to create these packages of both really good players, but obviously the objective is pretty clear, because as we've gone through with this farm system right now, there really is not a single hitting prospect, even including these new draft picks. There's not like a single hitting prospect that we think is forecasted for stardom or likely to reach stardom. Even if those have the potential, they could really use just a stud hitter that at least in Craig Mish's observation, Jazz alone won't be able to get you. So, I mean, the Yankees are one team that needs relief help and could use Jazz at second base. But then you have reports, and Mish actually doubled down on this, what Jim Bowden said about how like big market teams are kind of lukewarm on Jazz. I thought it was kind of the opposite, that I know Jazz would embrace being with a front running huge market team, but apparently teams on the other side in that position don't want to risk upsetting their chemistry or whatever vague excuses they make about that. If you take them off the board, the thing with Tanner is that I think the teams that would give the most are the ones right now that feel they're definitely going to be in the postseason. His value as a rental is so much bigger to teams that know they're going to be able to use him in October, where relievers can have an outsized impact on games and on series because they can pitch more often. There are more off days in between, and being closer to the finish line, there's less restraint about pushing them to their limits. The teams that are like locked to make it to October, maybe you include the Orioles in there. The Phillies would be a team in there, but they also have a really good bullpen as it is right now. The Dodgers, I think, are a pretty safe possibility that certainly has the prospect talent to give up, but I don't necessarily see that as a Jazz landing spot. They'll try. I just don't think there's going to be a perfect match out there that desperately needs both of these guys at the same time. Maybe going back to the Mariners, is the Mariners being a good Jazz landing spot. They have a good bullpen as well, but not so many lefties in that bullpen. So that's something that Tanner Scott could bring them. But at the same time, like, they're kind of dicey to even make it in the postseason in the first place. But I think Seattle is the best chance of putting together a big blockbuster because they do have the talent, the prospect talent that they could be willing to give up for both Scott and Jazz. But yeah, it's a tricky negotiation any way you slice it to get there.
I'll double down on the Seattle thing. I was going to mention it, but I did not get to talk about Jazz. But Seattle, they're in their top 10 prospects. They have 6 guys that are under 20 years old. So, I mean, that is like the gold mine for Peter Benditz. If you want to package Tanner Scott and Jazz together, you could get a guy like maybe you could get Colt Emerson. He's one of their top 3 guys. But even if you look in their top 10, you got guys. Ty Pete was linked to the Marlins last year, shortstop, left-handed hitter. Very good player. I think he has a very high ceiling as well. Lazar Montez, I believe he is their 4 or 5 guy, another outfielder. And Johnny Farmello, another lefty, who, I mean, if you look at the Mariners farm system, it's like a dream, honestly. I think if you really want to put Jazz somewhere, I think he fits the best in Seattle. And if you really want to package Jazz and Tanner, I think Seattle would be the best place. You do have Andres Munoz, who made the All-Star game. But if you really want to just lock down that bullpen, I think that's a no-brainer. I think that's a perfect fit.
Yeah. And I think with that, Eli, it's a perfect time to go ahead. Not to prediction time yet, but actually talk about this series. It seems like something we've been dreading the entirety of this stream. But with a 7-10 start, we do have some time to talk about this 4-game series between the Mets and the Miami Marlins. Let's go ahead and talk about the Marlins first, and then we'll get into the Mets. But let's look at the first Marlins lineup going into the second half. This is what they will be bringing out here with Emmanuel Rivera, Edwards, Otto Lopez, all the guys. Zach, talk to us when you see this lineup, when you see this Marlins lineup. What do you see? What do you like? What don't you like? And what did this lineup say to you for the rest of this second half of the season?
I like seeing Xavier Edwards in there, and I'd like to see him even higher. I think hitting 7th in the order for a guy who's hitting as well as he has over the last few games, 9 hits in his last 5. He's been racking up the multi-hit games like crazy. Game-winning hit going into the All-Star break, too. Why not have him hit behind Jazz? I know that Skip's done that plenty this season, so I think hitting him in the 2-hole. And it's interesting with DLC with his righty-lefty splits because he's been hitting better against lefties in a smaller sample size. So that'd be the one thing. But other than that, I think it's about what you'd expect for the Marlins heading into a rivalry weekend series.
Yeah. 4-game stretch here. Well, let's go ahead. I want to hear from Nate more on this Marlins lineup. What do you see here before we head over to the Mets and see what they have on?
Honestly, just looking for Jazz to, keep boosting that trade value. Hopefully he stays hot. Nice to see Otto Lopez back. Jesus Sanchez, we mentioned earlier, back in the lineup against a lefty. I mean, the season's been long gone. You might as well just get guys like him reps because what are you hurting at this point? Mm-hmm. And I'll double down on Xavier Edwards. I think he should be leading off every single game. He's OPSing over 800. There's nothing to lose at this point. Let him get his reps. He's came up with a chip on his shoulder, and he's proven that he can last year. He's made some good plays on defense as well. So I think Xavier Edwards should be hitting leadoff every single game, give Jazz a chance to drive him in. So that's what I'm looking for on the Marlins side.
Yeah. And now going into the Mets, we're a team that could potentially be buyers. There's reports going out there that they're becoming more of a buyers as we head more into the break. really great performances they're getting from Jose Iglesias, Francisco Alvarez coming in back to close to 100%. Eli, you're in that area. You're in New York State. What is the scuttlebutt around the Mets? What are you hearing more about them and maybe closer to the deadline and what you see from this lineup from these players?
Yeah, I think people are pleasantly surprised just because of how poorly the first quarter of the season went. It seemed pretty clear that they were going to be like mediocre and just on the selling side, and things really turned around. Where was that inflection point? When Grimace, I don't know, I think people nationally are aware of this, when they had the Grimace character throughout the ceremonial first pitch in like late May. Ever since then, they've been one of the best teams in baseball. That was a turning point for them, apparently. And also that kind of coincided with the Iglesias call-up, where he started the year in AAA. Now he's playing the majority of the time at second base for them, getting a whole lot of singles, not much else, but you see that. Even the expected batting average is 341. So he's having the best month that he's had in a couple of years, and it's coming at a big time for them. But also Francisco Alvarez, he's been a key. Like at this point, there aren't a ton of catchers in baseball that I think you would take over Alvarez as an all-around catcher. The power that he has, the way that his defense has improved over there, I'd say that guy's definitely worth a shout out. Also, just having Lindor and Nimmo are very quietly performing exactly the way that they should. They're like earning every cent of their huge long-term contracts at the top of their lineup. There aren't a whole lot of teams that have better top two in their lineup than Lindor and Nimmo do. And so there was some commotion when both of them were snubbed from the All-Star game and Pete Alonso made it. I mean, Alonso might be their fifth best hitter as an all-around position player at this point. Talk about guys whose reputation kind of exceeds their production. He's kind of in that situation right now where he's done damage to the Marlins in the past. And so maybe he's a underdog to have a good series again here. But at this point, he's really being overshadowed by a whole lot of his teammates.
Yeah, Grimace throughout the first pitch was on June 12th, and of course it was against the Marlins. So that's when that's when the winning. And of course, the day after, that's when JD Martinez hit the walk-off homer off Tanner Scott. So maybe that's all I needed was to play against the Marlins in Citi Field.
The Grimace Mets are 19-9 for reference since then. So
even better than I thought.
So do the Marlins need to bring out the Hamburglar? Do they need to bring out Mayor McCheese? See what happens there. But let's go ahead into the pitching matchups very quickly, Eli. Since it is 4 games, we will see 4 different sets of starting pitchers this series running through Monday, and seeing who the Marlins have. Maybe it could be a potential audition for some of these starting pitchers to see where they will go on the trade deadline. So for this first game, we are going to see, I believe it is Eddie Cabrera. Carver, talk to us. You mentioned Edward Cabrera earlier. He's now going today to face the Mets. What does he have to do to improve at least today, this series, this season for himself?
It's always the same story with this pitcher. It really is. Just in terms of managing control and command. That really is it. I mean, we've pointed to it so many times. I mean, his last start didn't walk anybody and had 7 strikeouts, but also gave up 7 runs, right? So the guy needs to know where the baseball is going and how to place it. It's always been the story with this pitcher. It seems to happen around second or third time through the lineup most of the time that this guy just loses complete control of everything that he's doing, whether it's walking guys or whether it's just placing stuff right over the heart of the plate. So it's control and command. It's always been the same thing. It's always been the thing that he's never been able to fix, along with his health permeating long-term. And we continue to talk about the same thing with this pitcher. So it's really becoming, I think, a foregone conclusion, in my opinion, that this guy is a bullpen pitcher and not a starter. I think I've felt that way for a while. And I really think that that's where the Marlins should go with this guy, not only to limit how many pitches he's throwing and how many innings he's throwing, which doesn't seem like he can handle a full slate of starters innings with health, but also to limit him possibly going through the lineup more than one time. I think that that's a foregone conclusion. I think that once the Marlins have more major league ready pitchers, he won't be a starter anymore.
Interesting. And I want to hear from Nate. I want to hear from you about Trevor Rogers. I know Trevor Rogers, that middle one, very interesting matchup against Luis Severino. Luis Severino going a bit viral right now with a quote he had on the Yankees of all teams that he's going to be facing next. But talk to us about Trevor. I know the win-loss record does not look good, but again, he's been the most when I say consistent, I mean he has been available for the Marlins throughout the entirety of the season. I mentioned this before. The best ability is availability, and Trevor has at least done that, something we haven't seen in quite a while with him. Well, what does Trev Harrer have to do for that game against Severino? And is it also an audition for other teams that could potentially want Trevor?
I know you said that he's always been available, but I don't believe that's going to be enough for teams to, really inquire on him, maybe get him this deadline. I will say that he has definitely improved since the beginning of the season. I know we got unlucky in the first couple of games, but, he's a guy that's kind of had to reinvent himself after losing velo on his fastball. It definitely, you could see it. March, April, May was trying to hurt him a lot, but he has been consistent. He has, at least been out there for the Marlins this season. And he looked great in Cincinnati in his last start. So if he didn't continue to build on that, he looked obviously not like his 2021 All-Star self, but if he can be serviceable, I know the 1-9 record kind of really doesn't, in a way it does, really summarize how he's been, but I think he's improved since the start of the season. So if he didn't keep, spotting his fastball well and getting his off-speed in there, I think we can have a good start in some Mets.
Yeah. And I think with that, we just hit the hour mark. Let's go ahead into prediction time. Let's go ahead and talk about these next 4 games. So, Eli, let's get that music.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
It has been so long since we last did this. I wonder if I can even find the leaderboard that's updated. Yeah, okay, I found it pretty quick. Daniel is occupying his familiar post, coming out of the All-Star break, just 1 point ahead of a couple of our super subs, Gabriel Rivia and Baby Seal right there. We remind people to play along with us as a super sub all season long if you want to. And we include our stream panelists, our stream guests every single time, picking how many games the Marlins are going to win in the series, who will be the MVP. Remind you, this is a 4-game series. It is they call it a wraparound series from Friday to Monday. No, I love it. It's easy for people to overlook that, but it is an even number of games between these two rivals, the third of their 4 series between each other this season. Very quickly, let's just pull up some super sub predictions that we have. And people have it pretty split down the middle, a little bit leaning towards the Mets, actually. So nobody that I've seen yet has picked the Marlins to win at least 3 out of 4 in the series, but also no sweeps either way. These teams generally play each other pretty evenly. And so that is what people are thinking right now. We go quickly to the ballpark to hear again from Kevin and Isaac, their series predictions.
Alrighty, Marlins Mets 4-game set. I'm going to say that the Marlins will split against the Mets, and Otto Lopez is going to be my series MVP. Isaac, you're up.
I think it'll be a series split as well, and I'm going to go with Sean Manaea.
Alrighty, back to you, Eli.
Without further ado, let's get going.
Starting us off, Mr. Nate.
I'm going to go with tied along with Kevin and Isaac. I think the Marlins will split this series, and I believe Xavier Edwards is going to continue to hit, continue to drive guys in, series MVP.
Ooh, all right. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Mets take 3 out of 4. I think they're going to do it. The betterment of the pitching matchups. And then for my MVP, I'm going to go with a hitter with more games, more opportunities, more at-bats. I'm going to go with JD Martinez. Has 2 home runs back in South Florida. Alex Carpenter.
Pitching for the Marlins is not a sure thing and won't be probably for the rest of the year. So I will go with the Mets taking 3 out of 4. And this guy's gotten fortunate. Eli talked about it before. He's been fortunate this year in terms of BABIP, and he's been very unfortunate against the Marlins. So I think those 2 things combine, and Francisco Alvarez gets the MVP in this series.
Eli.
I'm going with a Marlins series split right here, with MVP honors going to Brian De La Cruz, somewhat of a forgotten man, I think, recently. He's going to have a walk-off hit during one of those 2 Marlins wins during the series as they split it down the middle with the Mets.
All right, that's going to do it for us here. You can keep up with everything Fish on First on Twitter. You can
Did
keep
you get
up
Zach?
with
Did I
get Zach?
Oh my God! Did you say Zach?
Oh my God! I'm sorry about
I'll keep it quick. I got Mets 3 out of 4.
Take your time.
Former American Heritage Patriot High School star, former actual Miami Hurricane commit turned New York Met, Mark Vientos, series MVP. Grimace Mets are hot, but we'll see. I got Mets 3 out of 4.
Oh, appreciate it. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I got too carried away there. I'm sorry about that.
I'm new.
But that's going to do it for us here. Again, for FOF Live, presented by Berger and Hicks. For myself, Daniel, Eli, Alex, Nate. For Zach, for Kevin, for Isaac. Always go fish.